The rain hammered against the palace windows as Thomas stood perfectly still in the dim corridor. His boots were polished to a mirror shine. His red uniform was pressed without a single crease. For 12 years, he had been invisible, silent, loyal. A royal guard who knew every secret whispered behind closed doors. But tonight, everything would change. Thomas heard footsteps approaching from the east wing. Quick, nervous, he didn't move. Didn't even blink. That's what they trained him to do. Blend into the walls like a statue. People forget that statues have eyes and ears. The footsteps belonged to Margaret, one of the senior housekeepers. She was carrying something wrapped in dark velvet. Her hands were shaking. Thomas watched from the corner of his eye as she glanced left, then right, then hurried down the servants' staircase. Something was wrong. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, hit that subscribe button. You won't believe where this is going. Thomas had served under 3 different monarchs. He had seen scandal. He had seen heartbreak. But he had never seen fear like this. Not in Margaret's eyes. She had worked at the palace for 30 years. She didn't scare easily. He waited 5 minutes. Then he followed. The staircase led to the lower levels, where most visitors never went. Storage rooms. Old kitchens. Places filled with forgotten furniture and paintings covered in dust sheets. Thomas moved silently through the narrow hallway. His training made him a ghost. He heard voices ahead. Low, urgent. Thomas pressed himself against the cold stone wall and listened. You can't keep doing this. That was Margaret's voice. Strained. Almost breaking. I don't have a choice. Man's voice. Young, defensive. She'd never notice. There are hundreds of them. She noticed these ones. They're from the private collection. If anyone finds out, no one will find out. Unless you tell them. There was a long silence. Thomas held his breath. This is the last time, Margaret finally said. I mean it, Tom. If you get caught, I never saw you. I never helped you. I know. Thank you. Thomas heard movement. He slipped into a side room just as Margaret appeared in the corridor. Her face was pale. She walked past without seeing him, clutching her apron like it might protect her from something. When her footsteps faded, Thomas emerged. He followed the sound of the young man's breathing. It led him to a storage room at the end of the hall. The door was slightly open. Inside, a young man in his late 20s sat on a wooden crate. He was unwrapping the velvet cloth. Even in the weak light, Thomas could see what it contained. Jewels. Not just any jewels. Royal jewels. The kind that belonged in display cases behind bulletproof glass. Emeralds the size of thumbnails. A diamond necklace that had been worn by queens for 2 centuries. A sapphire brooch that appeared in history books. The young man held them up to the light, and for a moment, his face looked almost sad. Thomas knew that face. He had seen it in photographs on the queen consort's desk. At family gatherings he had stood guard over. In the private quarters where he sometimes patrolled at night, this was Tom Parker Bowles, Camilla's son, and he was holding stolen jewels in his hands. Thomas didn't move. His mind was racing, but his body remained frozen. Years of training had taught him control, but nothing had prepared him for this. Tom wrapped the jewels back in the velvet cloth. He tucked the bundle inside his jacket and stood up. His hands were steadier now, like he'd done this before. Many times before, Thomas stepped back into the shadows as Tom left the room. He watched him climb the stairs and disappear into the night through a side exit that most people didn't even know existed. The guard stood alone in the empty corridor. His breath came faster now. His heart pounded against his ribs. What was he supposed to do? Report it? To whom? This wasn't some random thief. This was the queen consort's son. The stepson of the king. One wrong move could destroy careers, lives, maybe even his own. But those jewels belonged to the crown, to the nation. To history, Thomas made his way back to his post. The night shift passed in a blur. Every footstep made him jump. Every shadow looked suspicious. By the time dawn broke over the palace grounds, he hadn't slept, hadn't eaten, could barely think straight. He went home to his small flat in South London. His wife, Sarah, was making breakfast. She took one look at his face and put down the frying pan. "What happened?" she asked. Thomas sat at the kitchen table. He rubbed his eyes. "I saw something last night. Something I wasn't supposed to see." Sarah poured him tea. She waited. They had been married for 15 years. She knew when to push and when to stay quiet. "If I tell you," Thomas said slowly, "you can never repeat it. Not to anyone. Not ever. You're scaring me. I'm scared too." He told her everything. The jewels. Tom Parker Bowles. Margaret's involvement. Sarah listened without interrupting. When he finished, she sat back in her chair. "Oh my God," she whispered. "I don't know what to do. You have to report it, Thomas. Those jewels are priceless. They're not his to take. You think I don't know that?" His voice came out sharper than he meant. "But who do I report it to? His stepfather is the king. His mother is the queen consort. The people I'd report to work for them." Sarah reached across the table and took his hand. "You're a good man. You've always done the right thing. That hasn't changed." But Thomas wasn't sure anymore. The right thing could cost him everything. His job, his pension, his reputation. Maybe worse. He went back to the palace that evening for his next shift. Everything looked normal. The tourists took photos. The guards stood at attention. The flag flew high above the gates, but Thomas saw it differently now. Behind the golden gates in perfect uniforms, there were secrets. Dark ones. He decided to watch, to wait, to gather evidence before making any decisions. Over the next 3 weeks, Thomas changed his patrol routes. He volunteered for night shifts. He made excuses to be near the storage rooms and private quarters, and he saw things. Tom came back, not once, but 4 more times. Always late at night. Always through the side entrance. Always leaving with something wrapped in velvet or tucked inside his coat. Margaret helped him each time. She looked more miserable with every visit. Her face had aged 10 years in 3 weeks. Thomas started taking notes, dates, times, descriptions of what Tom carried. He photographed the storage room door with his phone. He recorded conversations when he could. The evidence was piling up, but so was his fear. Then one night, everything fell apart. Thomas was following Tom down the corridor when a floorboard creaked under his boot. The sound echoed in the silence like a gunshot. Tom spun around. Their eyes met. For 3 long seconds, neither of them moved. Thomas saw recognition flash across Tom's face. Then something else. Something cold. "You," Tom said quietly. "You've been following me?" Thomas's training kicked in. His face became a mask. Blank. Professional. "Sir, I'm on patrol. Is there something I can help you with?" Tom stepped closer. The velvet bundle was visible under his jacket. "Don't play games with me. I've seen you, watching, following." "I don't know what you mean, sir." "Yes, you do?" Tom's voice was low. Dangerous. "And now we have a problem." The corridor felt smaller suddenly, colder. Thomas was bigger than Tom, stronger. But that didn't matter here. Power didn't come from muscles in this world. It came from bloodlines, from titles, from proximity to the throne. "I'm just doing my job," Thomas said carefully. Tom laughed. It wasn't a happy sound. "Your job is to protect the royal family, not spy on them. My job is to protect the crown and what belongs to it." The words came out before Thomas could stop them. Tom's expression hardened. "You need to forget what you've seen," Tom said. "For your own good? Is that a threat?" "It's advice. From someone who actually cares what happens to you." Tom glanced down the corridor. "You have a wife, don't you?" "Sarah works as a teacher. St. Mary's Primary School in Lewisham." Thomas felt ice in his veins. "Leave her out of this. Then we understand each other." Tom adjusted his jacket. "You've been a loyal guard for 12 years. It would be a shame to throw that away over a misunderstanding." "A misunderstanding?" My mother sometimes asks me to move items from storage. Family pieces. Things that need cleaning or appraisal. That's all you've seen. Nothing more.
It was a lie.
They both knew it. But Tom was offering him an escape route. A way to look the other way and keep his life intact. Thomas thought about Sarah. About their mortgage. About the pension he'd been counting on. About everything they'd built together. "I understand, sir," he heard himself say. Tom's shoulders relaxed slightly. "Good. I knew you were smart." He started to walk away, then paused. "Thomas, right? That's your name?" "Yes, sir. You're a good man, Thomas. Don't forget that. Good men know when to be quiet." Tom disappeared down the corridor. Thomas stood alone, feeling like he'd just betrayed something important, something he couldn't quite name. He went home that night and told Sarah everything. She listened, her face growing paler with each word. "He threatened you," she said when he finished. "He threatened us, not directly. But yes, Thomas, we have to go to the police." "To the press? To someone and say what? That the Queen Consort's son is stealing royal jewels? Without proof? Without witnesses? They'll destroy me, Sarah. You know they will, so you're just going to let him get away with it." Thomas looked at his hands. Hands that had served the crown faithfully for over a decade. "I don't know." For 3 days he barely slept. He went through the motions at work. Stood at his post. Saluted when required. But inside, he was dying. Then Margaret approached him. It was during his lunch break. She found him sitting alone in the guard's restroom. She looked over her shoulder before sitting down beside him. "I know you've seen things," she said quietly. "Things you shouldn't have seen." Thomas said nothing. "I need to tell you something." "Something important," her voice cracked. "I didn't want to help him. He said his mother needed the money, that she had debts. Gambling debts that the king couldn't know about." Thomas turned to look at her. "Camilla has gambling debts?" "That's what Tom told me. Millions of pounds. He said if word got out, it would destroy the family. Destroy the monarchy. He was selling the jewels to pay off the debts quietly." "Do you believe that?" Margaret's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know what to believe anymore. But I'm tired of carrying this secret. It's killing me. Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're a good man. Everyone says so. And I think you might be the only person who can stop this before it goes too far." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small key. "This opens the private storage vault. The one where the most valuable pieces are kept. Tom's planning something big. He told me last night. He said this would be the last time. That he needed one more piece to clear everything." She pressed the key into Thomas's hand. "Stop him," she whispered. "Please, before we all lose everything." Thomas stared at the key in his palm. It was small, made of old brass. The kind of key that opened doors to history. 2 secrets that could topple kingdoms. "When?" he asked. "Tonight. Midnight. He always comes at midnight." Margaret stood up. She looked smaller than before. Older. "I'm sorry I didn't come to you sooner. I was afraid. But I'm more afraid of what I've become." She left without another word. Thomas finished his shift in a daze. He went home. Told Sarah everything. Again, she held his hands across the dinner table and said the words he already knew were true. "You have to stop him." "How?" "If I confront him, it's my word against his. I'm nobody. He's royalty. You have the key. You can catch him in the act. Court it. Get proof, and then what? Go to the police? The press? Either way, I'm finished. We're finished." Sarah squeezed his hands tighter. "Maybe, but at least we'll be able to look at ourselves in the mirror." That night, Thomas returned to the palace. He told the duty officer he'd forgotten something in his locker. A believable lie. He'd told a lot of lies lately. Each one made the next one easier. He made his way to the private storage vault. It was in the oldest part of the palace. Down 3 flights of stairs, past portraits of dead kings and queens, seemed to watch him with knowing eyes. The vault door was reinforced steel painted to look like wood. Tourists who got lost down here would never guess what it was. Thomas slipped the key into the lock. It turned smoothly. Inside, the vault was lined with shelves. Each shelf held items wrapped in protective cloth. Labels written in elegant handwriting described their contents: tiaras, necklaces, rings, brooches, centuries of wealth and power stored in a room. The size of a small bedroom. Thomas set up his phone on a high shelf, angled toward the entrance. He pressed record. Then he found a spot behind a cabinet where he could see but not be seen, and he waited. The minutes crawled by like hours. His legs cramped. His back ached. He checked his watch. 11:30. 11:50-8. Midnight came and went. Nothing. Maybe Margaret was wrong. Maybe Tom had changed his plans. Maybe footsteps. Thomas's heart hammered. He pressed himself against the wall. The vault door swung open. Tom entered alone. He moved with confidence, like he owned the place. In a way, he did. He went straight to a particular shelf. Third row. Second section. He knew exactly what he wanted. Thomas watched as Tom pulled back a protective cloth. Beneath it was a tiara. Even in the dim light, it blazed with diamonds. This wasn't just any tiara. This was Queen Victoria's coronation tiara, one of the most famous pieces in the entire collection, worth millions. Maybe tens of millions? Tom lifted it carefully. He studied it for a moment, turning it in his hands. Then he did something strange. He pressed his forehead against the cold diamonds and closed his eyes. "I'm sorry," Tom whispered. "I'm so sorry." It wasn't the voice of a thief. It was the voice of someone drowning, someone desperate. Thomas almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Tom wrapped the tiara in cloth and placed it inside a bag he'd brought. He turned to leave. That's when he saw Thomas. The guard had shifted his weight. His boots scraped against stone. The sound was tiny, but in the silence of the vault, it was thunder. Tom froze. "You!" Thomas stepped out of the shadows. His phone was still recording. "Put it back. I can't do that." "You have to. This ends tonight." Tom's face twisted into something ugly. "You don't understand." "You couldn't possibly understand, then. Explain it to me." "My mother isn't some villain. She's drowning in debt. Debts from before she married the king. Debts that could destroy her if they came out. Destroy him. She made mistakes when she was younger. Trusted the wrong people. And now those people are demanding their money. So you're stealing from the crown to pay them?" "I'm protecting my family." Tom's voice echoed off the walls. "What would you do? If your mother was in danger? If everything she'd worked for her entire life was about to collapse?" Thomas thought of his own mother. Dead 5 years now from cancer. He thought of the times she'd gone without medicine because they couldn't afford it. The times she'd worn the same coat through 3 winters. The dignity she'd maintained even when she had nothing. "I'd tell the truth," Thomas said quietly. "I'd ask for help. I wouldn't steal." Tom laughed bitterly. "The truth? The truth would destroy her. The press would tear her apart. The public already hates her. This would be the final nail. Maybe, but at least it would be honest." "Honest." Tom spat the word like poison. "You know what's honest? I'm exhausted. I've been carrying this secret for 2 years. Selling piece after piece. Watching my mother pretend everything is fine while she's dying inside. And for what? To protect a family that uses people like chess pieces?" He sank down onto a storage crate. The fight seemed to drain out of him. "Go ahead. Turn me in. Ruin us all. At least it'll be over." Thomas looked at this man. This privileged, broken man who'd been born into wealth, but somehow ended up stealing from his own family. Part of him felt disgust. But another part felt something else. Pity. "There's another way," Thomas said. Tom looked up. His eyes were red. "What way?" "You tell the king everything. The debts. The thefts. All of it. You face the consequences, but you do it honestly. As a family, he'll never forgive her. Or me. Maybe not. But it's better than prison. Better than scandal. Better than me going to the authorities with this video? Tom's face went white. You recorded this? Thomas nodded. Everything. From the moment you walked in. For a long moment, Tom just stared at him. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. It was a sad smile. Defeated, but also relieved. You know what the funny thing is? I'm glad you caught me. I've wanted to stop for so long. But once you start lying, it gets easier. And easier. Until you don't even recognize yourself anymore. He pulled the tiara from the bag and placed it back on the shelf. His hands were gentle, reverent. My mother doesn't know I've been doing this. The debts are real. But I've been selling the jewels and keeping most of the money for myself. Telling her I paid off more than I did. Using the rest to fund my own lifestyle. My restaurant. My trips. My ... everything. Thomas felt the air leave his lungs. You've been lying to her too? To everyone. I'm good at it. Had a lot of practice. Tom's voice cracked. My whole life I've been the son who didn't quite fit. Not royal enough for the palace. Not normal enough for the real world. Just ... floating. And when I found out about her debts, I saw an opportunity. A way to be useful. Hero. But I'm not a hero. I'm just a thief. The confession hung between them. Raw, honest, painful. Come with me, Thomas said. Right now, we'll go to the king together. You'll tell him everything. I'll be there as a witness. Why would you do that? Because despite everything, I think you want to do the right thing. You're just scared. And I understand that. Tom wiped his eyes. If we do this, my life is over. You know that, right? Everything I've built. Gone. Maybe, but you'll still have your life. And a chance to earn back what you've lost. That's more than most people get. They stood there in the vault, surrounded by centuries of history. Two men from completely different worlds. Connected by one stolen moment. Finally, Tom nodded. Okay, let's do it. But as they turned to leave, the vault door swung open wider. Camilla stood in the doorway. She was wearing a silk robe. Her hair was down. Without her makeup and formal clothes, she looked older, smaller. Human, ma'am, Tom breathed. I followed you, she said quietly. I've known for weeks that something was wrong. You've been avoiding me, acting strange. Tonight I saw you leave your flat. I followed you here. Her eyes moved to the tiara on the shelf, then to the bag in Tom's hands. Understanding dawned across her face like sunrise. Terrible and beautiful and impossible to look away from. Oh, Tom, what have you done? I was trying to help you. The debts I know about the debts. Her voice was sharp, cutting. I've been dealing with them myself, quietly through proper channels. Did you really think I'd let you steal from me? Tom's face crumbled. You knew? Of course I knew. I'm not an idiot. She stepped into the vault. But I didn't know it was this bad. It's much. For this long? She turned to Thomas. He stood at attention automatically. Old habits and you are? She asked. Thomas Brent, ma'am. Royal Guard? 12 years of service? You've been watching my son? Yes, ma'am. You have evidence? He held up his phone. Yes, ma'am. Camilla looked at the phone, then at Tom, then at Thomas. For a long moment, no one spoke. The weight of history pressed down on them from every shelf, every jewel, every stolen piece of the past. What do you want? She finally asked Thomas, money, position, a guarantee of silence? Thomas had thought about this moment, what he'd say, what he'd do. But standing here now, facing a queen, he realized he already knew the answer. I want the truth to come out, properly, through the right channels. I want the stolen items returned. And I want justice. Justice. Camilla repeated the word like it was foreign. Do you know what justice means in this world? It means scandal. It means my son goes to prison. It means the monarchy suffers another blow it may not recover from. Maybe, Thomas said, but it also means honesty, and that's worth something. Camilla studied him, really looked at him, past the uniform, past the title, at the man underneath. "You're brave," she said.
Act stupid.
"But brave. I've been called worse." She almost smiled. Almost. Then her face hardened again. "If you release that video, you'll destroy more than just my family. Every person who depends on this institution, every charity we support, every tradition we maintain. Is that what you want?" Thomas thought about it, really thought about it. The weight of her words, the truth in them, the complexity of choosing between right and convenient. "What I want," he said slowly, "is to sleep at night." Camilla's expression softened, just slightly, but enough. "What if I told you there was a middle path?" she asked. "One where justice is served, but quietly. Where my son faces consequences, but the monarchy survives. Would you consider it?" Thomas glanced at Tom. The man looked broken, defeated, but also somehow relieved. "I'm listening," Thomas said.
8.
Tom will confess. To the king, to the proper authorities within the palace. Every item he took will be documented and returned. He'll face internal charges, possibly criminal ones, depending on what the king decides. But it will be handled privately. The way royal scandals have always been handled, that's not justice. That's a cover-up, is it? Camilla moved closer. "My son will lose everything. His reputation, his freedom, probably, his relationship with his family. He'll carry this shame for the rest of his life. But the institution will survive. The people who depend on us will be protected." Isn't that a form of justice too? Thomas wanted to argue, to say that real justice meant transparency, public accountability. But he thought about Margaret, about the other staff who'd be dragged into the scandal, about the chaos that would follow if this story hit the press. "What about me?" he asked. "What happens to the guard who witnessed everything?" "You'll be transferred. Promoted, actually. To a position outside the palace, better pay, better hours. A reward for your loyalty and discretion. You're buying my silence. I'm compensating you for making an impossible choice." She held his gaze. "You're not the villain here, Thomas. Neither am I. We're just people trying to navigate an impossible situation with limited options."
How?
Tom spoke up then. His voice was quiet, defeated. "She's right. I should face consequences. But destroying the monarchy won't bring justice. It'll just create more victims." Thomas looked at his phone. The video was still there. Evidence that could change everything. Or nothing. Depending on what he did next, he thought about Sarah, about their life together, about the good he could do with a promotion, the security it would bring, but he also thought about his mother, about the values she'd taught him, about looking yourself in the mirror and liking what you see. "I need time," he said. "To think, to talk to my wife." "You have until morning," Camilla said. "After that, I'll assume you've made your choice. And I'll make mine." It wasn't quite a threat, but it wasn't not a threat either. Thomas left the vault. He walked through the palace corridors one last time as a guard, past the portraits, past the gold leaf, past the symbols of power and history and tradition. He went home. Sarah was waiting up. He told her everything. The offer, the choice, the weight of it all. They talked until sunrise. Argued, cried, held each other. Tried to figure out what the right thing was when there were no right answers. In the end, Sarah said something that cut through all the noise. "Whatever you decide, I'm with you. But remember this. You can't control what happens to the monarchy or Tom or anyone else. You can only control what kind of man you choose to be." That morning, Thomas went back to the palace. He requested a meeting with the king's private secretary. He handed over the video. He told them everything. No deals. No negotiations. Just the truth. What happened next surprised everyone. The king himself called Thomas in. Not to threaten him, not to buy him off, but to thank him. "You did what you thought was right," the king said. "Even when it was hard. Even when it cost you something. That's rare. especially here. Tom was arrested quietly, not by public police, but by palace security. He was charged internally with theft. The items were all recovered. Margaret was given immunity in exchange for testimony. The scandal never went public. The palace released a statement saying Tom Parker Bowles had resigned from all public duties due to personal matters. Gambling debts were paid off through private royal funds quietly, efficiently. Thomas was offered the promotion. He turned it down. Instead, he resigned. On his own terms, with his head high, he got a job as a security consultant. The pay was good. Better than the palace, actually. And he could sleep at night. Years later, Sarah asked him if he regretted it. Walking away from everything, Thomas thought about it. Really thought about it. No, he finally said. I saw behind the curtain. I saw that power doesn't make people better or worse. It just makes them more of what they already are. Tom was weak and desperate. Camilla was protective and calculating. The king was pragmatic. And me. I was just trying to be decent. And were you? Decent? Thomas smiled. I tried. That's all anyone can do. The royal jewels stayed in their vault. Locked away, protected, symbols of history and power, and everything Thomas had turned his back on. But every night, when he lay down next to Sarah, he thought about that moment in the vault. The choice he'd made, the man he'd chosen to be, and he slept peacefully. Because some things are worth more than jewels, more than power, more than silence, things like integrity, like honesty, like being able to look at yourself in the mirror and recognize who's looking back. The monarchy survived. It always does. Institutions are good at that. But Thomas survived too. And that mattered more than he ever expected, because in the end, we're all just guards, standing watch over our own souls. Protecting what matters. Letting go of what do, and sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply walk away from the palace and go home.